And these principles are very, very basic, and we'll talk, but most companies are not able to apply those. So I'd just like to start with a flashback, and I'm talking about the demand to delivery. Each business in retail responds to a demand, creates a demand, and that cycle of demand to delivery is something which the fashion industry is supposed to be very good at. And I'd like to take you through that. This was work which was done in the early 2000s with a fairly prominent Indian company whose lead time from concept to delivery at that time was 8.5 months. How many of you here in the business have a lead time from concept to delivery of more than this at the moment? Nobody? From raw concept to delivery in the stores. Okay. There's Sartaj raises his hand very reluctantly, and yeah. So there are still some companies which have concept to delivery lead times which are longer than this. We looked at actually how to crash this, and I've got to point it in the right direction. I'm not sure where it's going. Yeah, there you go. We crashed it to 1 month, and that was a significant benefit. The fundamental reason for seeking something like this is very simple. We talk about fashion forecasting, we talk about trend forecasting, we talk about reading the market. The fact is that there is not a single person in this room, let alone in the whole world, which actually, who can actually read, who can actually tell you exactly what's going to happen 8, 9 months, 12 months, 14 months down the line. Nobody knows. Not the best astrologer, not the best crystal ball gazer, not the best AI with machine learning built in, can tell you exactly what's going to happen a year down the line. And therefore, the closer you are to the season, the closer you are to the selling window, the better it is. So if you can respond quickly, if you are seeing a trend which is emerging in the market, and you can respond very quickly to it, that's the best. And the shorter you can make it, the better it is. So this work actually resulted in a case study which just for vanity reasons, how many of you have read this case study? Nobody in the audience? Please go ahead and read the case study. Thank you so much. But I wrote this case study in 2002. Yeah? And then in 2004, exactly 15 years ago, at the India Fashion Forum, it was called the Images Fashion Forum at that time, I talked about this case, which was built around Zara. And there were learnings from that, which actually are in these 6-pointer as well. And the funny thing is, when you look at these pointers, they're very basic. So there is 2 parts to the case study. One is the basic Zara business model, and the second part actually is the relevance or the applicability to India. And these principles are very, very basic, and we'll talk through some of these as we go through the discussion. But most companies are not able to apply those. So this is my last slide for this section, and then we'll go to the discussion. When I started my career with a retailer, at that time the largest chain in the country, our normal demand to delivery cycle was 1 to 3 months, which you would say is pretty good, right? But even 3 months was too long for us. So there was a vendor which I identified in Mumbai, and we had a sales cycle, we had a demand to delivery cycle of 3 days at the end of it, where basically the sales update would be fed to the vendor on Monday, and by Thursday evening or Friday morning, we would have stocks on order in the store to respond to the demand, to the trend which we were seeing. And this was in 1991. So while our business was computerized and all that, the vendor was not. There was no advanced forecasting, there was no machine learning. It was in the process, it was in the way of doing things, and that's what we had to challenge to get to 3 days. So if it was possible 30 years ago, it's surely possible, more than possible today. The theme, the catchline or whatever, the caption of IFF is the future of fashion. And, I very strongly felt that we always tend to be talking about the past. When we're talking about fast fashion, I've told you, 15 years ago I was talking about fast fashion. The model has been around for 25, 30, 40 years, and we're still talking about it, but that's not the future, that's the past. And what is the future, I think, we've got to really think about very carefully. Currently, in the world, there are almost 80 billion items of fashion sold every year, and growing. And when you look at that graph, the US leads the picture, Japan is next, Canada. India and China are still way down. But the moment consumption starts picking up in the same way, you can think of what the numbers will look like. About half of the products that are sold at a discount, at a markdown, which means that they're essentially not needed. About 40% of the clothing is never worn or rarely worn, maybe worn once and then kept aside. This is our industry. Every single piece of clothing can consume as much as 2,500 liters to 4,000 liters of water during its life cycle, from procurement, production, all the way to maintenance, till the time it is cast off. And casting off, this is an American example, there are other examples around the world. An average American family throws away over 30 kilos of clothing a year, 70 pounds of clothing, right? And we've been talking about fast fashion and the ease, the darker side of fashionability. The very reason fashion exists is to have obsolescence embedded in your mind, saying this is obsolete, buy the next thing. And this is a huge, huge dark side of the fashion industry, which we all need to be cognizant of in this room. It is the second most polluting industry in the world, after oil. You've got to take that in for a bit. From the time raw material is procured, and this includes natural fibers, cotton is one of the most polluting crops that we have on this planet. It's a natural fiber. We're very proud of Indian cotton. US, Egypt, various countries produce cotton, but it's one of the most polluting crops. It's one of the most water-intensive crops. The production of fashion, the distribution of fashion, and eventually the disposal, as we talked about, is really, really worrisome. And if we are not talking about that, we are not talking about the future of fashion. If you look at the average time the fashion product will spend on the surface of this earth after it has been discarded, it is a horrifying amount of time. The plastic buttons, which are made of material which came from dinosaurs and insects and plants that lived 200, 300 million years ago, gets made into oil and then gets made into polyester, which then gets made into a button, and you discard the shirt, and it's going to lie around for at least 100, 200, maybe 500 years, not broken down. Even if you take cotton, which is again, natural fiber, it's going to take about 3, 4 months, 5 months to disintegrate completely. And it's a biological product. We have lots of non-biological products in the fashion industry. Shoes, the soles, for instance, they're synthetic completely. Nylon is a very common product in threads and so on. So it is something which is worrisome, and I'd just like you to look at this very short video. Can you please play the video? All of you would know about zombies, right? Zombies are essentially dead people who are undead. Fashion is a zombie business to me. Fashion as a business, as it has existed for the last 100 years, is dead. We just don't know it. We are running a dead business. If we are running the way the fashion business was being run in the last 10, 15, 20 years, and I don't care how much technology is embedded into it, I don't care whether it has stores or not, it's a dead business we are running. And if we haven't realized it, we are zombies. So there has to be another paradigm which has to come in if you have to run a sustainable business. And when you look at sustainability, this is a cycle which is often talked about. Produce, repair, reuse, recycle. To me, I've selected this particular graphic because to me, reduce is at the center of it. If you do not reduce, it doesn't matter how much you recycle, whether it is, polyester bottles, PET bottles being recycled into t-shirts, or whether it is recycling of old clothes into fiber fill or whatever, it doesn't matter. is still there. It's been consumed and it's being consumed again. You have to reduce. And after that, the whole reuse, recycle, repair comes into play. So this is my challenge, and I've been throwing it to people for the last couple of years, and I've not got a satisfactory answer, but I'm going to throw that challenge to you as well, to the panelists, and every one of you in this room. Think about it as you go through the next 2 days in this conference and in the further weeks to come and months to come. If consumption dropped to half in 10 years, and it's not a very long time, let me tell you that. If consumption dropped to half in 10 years, and obviously you have to run a profitable business still, how would you do it?